can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What's up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be breaking down exactly how comics accurate Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, was in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This is something I'm debating making a regular thing here on the channel, so if you dig it, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to share this video all over the multiverse. First off, I want to make sure something's very clear about this video. It's not to say that change is bad or everything has to be exactly as it was in the source material. That's not what I'm saying here. That is not what this video or any future videos of this kind are going to be about. What this is going to be about is how these characters, whether they're Marvel, DC, whatever, when they're adapted, how much of the original source material was adapted and was it adapted well, or how much wasn't adapted and whether or not that was a good or a bad thing. And maybe even give some ideas as to how maybe I would have done it differently. And as I mentioned earlier, our first candidate is going to be Black Panther: Wakanda Forever's Riri Williams. Riri Williams is a Marvel Comics character who made her debut in Invincible Iron Man #7 in 2016 and is the creation of Brian Michael Bendis and Mike Deodato Jr. The Black Panther: Wakanda Forever version of Riri Williams is an MIT student born and raised in Chicago and is one of the smartest people on the planet. It's heavily implied she has a mind capable of engineering and even reverse engineering things even Wakanda can't come up with sometimes. By the time we meet her in Wakanda Forever, she's already proven that she could reverse engineer Stark tech as well as create a vibranium detector that impressed even Shuri, and it was done with limited resources. This isn't that dissimilar from the comic book version of Riri Williams, who is also a student of MIT, also incredibly smart and considered a genius level intellect, who was also capable of making many of the same things as we see in Wakanda Forever, even impressing Shuri in the comics with her intellect and ingenuity, as well as her claim to fame reverse engineering Stark tech and creating her own brand of Iron Man style armor. The biggest difference between the two characters here is age and exactly what they were able to make in the early goings when reverse engineering Stark tech. In the movie Wakanda Forever, Riri Williams is 19 years old, but in the comics, Riri is still only 15 years old by the time that she's admitted to MIT. She was so smart that she advanced through grades and graduated earlier than any of her peers. She was so smart, in fact, that just being in a normal school bored her to death, leaving her parents and teachers to wonder at first if something was mentally wrong with her, but in truth, they soon realized she was just smarter than everyone else and needed more of a challenge. Now, I mentioned Riri's origin at first earlier in this video, but how accurate is it in Wakanda Forever? We don't know much about Riri at first in the movie as far as her beginnings go, but what we do know is that she implies she misses her stepfather, who is hinted at as being dead, and she also mentions a dad that's not around. In the comics, this is very much the same. In fact, not only is her father out of her life, but he's a whole supervillain named Dune. A man gifted with geokinesis powers, allowing him to control both rock, sand, and dirt as a weapon, who, for all intents and purposes, abandoned Riri and her mother when she was still a small child, and for the most part was treated as though he was presumed dead. She also has a stepfather in the comics named Gary, who was killed in a drive-by shooting, but was the one who helped nurture her drive to build things, despite the two of them not having the best relationship at first. She was always standoffish with him because she felt he was trying to replace her birth father, but when he was killed, she realized how much she truly loved him, and this left a huge void in Ironheart's well, heart. One thing that is never mentioned in Wakanda Forever and is very likely being saved for her upcoming Disney Plus TV series is her best friend, Natalie. Natalie was killed in the same drive-by shooting that also killed her stepfather, Gary, and while this is a major moment in Riri's life, Natalie is never mentioned in the film. However, Natalie, despite being dead, is still a major part of Riri's life in the comics thanks to Riri designing an AI for her Ironheart armor modeled after Natalie, which makes Riri's interest in Shuri's AI Griot in Wakanda Forever that much more interesting. Who knows, maybe we will see a version of the Natalie AI in the Ironheart TV series. As for Ironheart's powers and armor, all that seems to be fairly accurate, the only major difference being the trajectory in the advancements of her armors. The armor we see Riri use in the beginning of Wakanda Forever is far more low-tech than the suit that she builds first in the comics, and the armor that she wields in the film's final act is more like the Ironheart Mark III armor that she's currently using now, skipping the Mark II armor, which looks more like a traditional Iron Man suit. Now lastly, let's talk about personality. Riri in Wakanda Forever is a bit of a mixed bag. While Dominique Thorne does a fantastic job channeling the essence of Ironheart, Riri in the comics is a bit more reserved and less bombastic. She can be that way around people she's comfortable with in the comics and isn't shy to let people know how she feels, but she's rarely one for jokes and quips the way the MCU version of the character is. In fact, she's a far more serious-minded character who has little time for gags and kind of sees herself as more mature than most other people that are in her age bracket, especially when she's around the other champions. Characters like Miles Morales and Kamala Khan. And is a character who is heavily steeped in grief and dealing with the loss of her loved ones very early on in her comics run, and only up until recently has become a little bit more laid back and maybe a little bit closer to the version of Riri we see in the MCU right now. That said, I think that Ryan Coogler and Joe Robert Cole did a fantastic job taking the parts of Riri's comic book personality and blending it with something that might feel more authentic to casual comic book movie viewers. Now the real test is, how well did the Marvel Cinematic Universe adapt Riri Williams? I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Riri in Wakanda Forever is a very smart and incredibly engaging character, and I would definitely say she is a far more funny and affable character in Wakanda Forever versus what you would normally get from her in the Marvel Comics universe. Yet she still displays hints of the pain and grief and loss that's a major portion of her character's origin, without necessarily overdoing it or being heavy-handed with it, all the while saving those bits for future storytelling in her own Disney Plus series. Her armor was very similar in a lot of respects to the power levels we would be used to seeing of Ironheart in the comics. And even though she didn't really seem to use the armor quite as effectively as maybe I would have liked to have seen in Wakanda Forever, I do still feel like her drive to do what's right, her passion to get the job done and save the day was very much present there and kind of made up for that lack of experience in using the armor. And honestly, it kind of makes sense that she wasn't just automatically good at using the armor because she literally had just gotten it. She had only really just then started learning everything that it could do. And once again, I feel like her compassion, her drive to help her friends and allies, which is very much a thing from her comics run, all of that was present, and it felt very accurate to me. And while she may have gotten a major boost in armor very quickly in the MCU, it's already been shown that she is going to get a chance to build her own armor in the MCU that is probably going to be a lot closer to what she initially had in the very beginning, and then slowly building up to where she is currently without the need of Wakandan assistance. Anyways, let me know what other characters you'd like to see me judge on how accurate they are to the comics, as well as let me know how accurate you think Riri Williams was in Wakanda Forever. Until next time, keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.